Hey guys, AD51 Goose here, and just going to show you how to land at an airfield by using the velocity vector, and it will help put you down, pretty easy, pretty simply. The first part of this training, I've got a setup coming basically straight into Covaleti. I'm at 7,880 feet, 10 miles out, which I'm way too high. So one of the things you could do if you're too high, obviously, is you could pull your throttle back, put your speed brake out, dive for the deck, pull your nose up, and then slow down, throw your gear down, flaps and stuff, and kind of push yourself to try and make that landing. Or we can do it this way and do it with the velocity vector. And then after this one, I'll show you how you do it when you're doing a circuit. And the problem is when you do the circuit and you come into land, I don't get a whole lot of time to explain to you how to use the velocity vector. So that's why I'm doing this straight in from way too high, so that I can show how we can use that. All right. So here we go. All right. So of course, throttle back, speed brake out, and we're just going to maintain this altitude. We're not too worried about our altitude right now. This thing takes a while to slow down, so we're probably going to lose the end of the runway by the time it gets set up here. Okay, so gear down. And I'll give her a little bit up trim right now. I'm just going to wait for it to slow down a little bit more before I put the flaps down, otherwise it tends to flare up on you. Alright, here we go. Full flaps. As you can see here, nose comes back down. And I'll probably have to make some adjustments here with the E-bracket. Alright, it's a little bit crooked, so try and line up the front one. Okay, so now what I'm going to do here is we're going to bring the throttle up. So really what you want to do when you land here, the velocity vector, wherever you put that on the ground, if you keep it on that spot, that's where the plane will hit. Okay, so we're going to put it here. So basically we got it about the end of the runway, which is where we want it, right? A little hard to line her up from up here. A little more speed here. I want to get her up to the end because I want to show you guys this. Okay, so we got her at the end of the runway. So if we were able to hold it at this spot now, our descent rate's 2100. We can only have a descent rate of 500. Okay, so we're way too high. Descent rate's way too high. So I'm just going to bring the power back, and we know we have to let her sink down for us here, right? And so we're just going to let her drop. And as she's dropping, just kind of keep yourself in line with the runway. Alright, so we're at coming up to 2,000 here, so let's give her a little bit of throttle, bring the nose back up, and see when we get it at the end of the runway what our descent rate's going to be, right? And guarantee you we're going to be too high still. Almost guarantee here, right? Yeah, see, we're still at about 1300, so we're still too high. So bring the throttle back, let her sink down some more. Now I'll see if I'll let her get too low. Show you how you know if you're not descending enough. Let's let her come down here. Let's do it so we just kind of streak the top of these trees, which will probably just about put us too low, right? Okay, so some throttle. And remember, the 18's got a slow throttle response. It's very minor movements. So that's one of the nice things of landing like this on the airfields too. It kind of helps you with throttle control to get used to it. Now, as you can see, I'm on the end of the runway, and our descent rate's at -400, which is, damn near perfect. Okay, now as you see the velocity vector, if it starts going up the runway, that means you're going too fast. And obviously if it's starting to come towards you or before the runway, you're going too slow, right? And man, this is awesome. I love how this worked out this time, because my other go around it didn't pan out this well, right? So here we come, coming down, and power rate off, and let her sink onto the runway. There you go. I think it was at what's about 380 per descent right there, right? Speed brakes out, get her to slow down, and you know, I may have to apply brakes a little bit right when I get to the end. One of the things about the brakes, we all know we end up skidding out and going crazy, right? Now this runway is pretty short, and as you can see, I don't have the anti-skid on. And here we go. Now we're going to brake, and as you can see, it brakes a lot nicer. We don't get all that swaying and stuff in her, right? And so now let's start our turn so we don't go off the runway, and there you have it. Straight in from very high altitude close into the runway. Alright, so now we'll hop over to the other segment here. Alright, so now we're over at the airfield, and when you're doing your circuit, when you're landing with this, there's only two things you really need to know, and that's the heading that the runway is on that you're going to land, and then the reciprocal course of that. Okay, so reciprocal course is actually really easy to figure out, and so what you do, if you're on the right side of the compass, so that would be from 000 to 180 degrees, so coming around to the right, you would add 200 to the number and then subtract 20. And if you're on the left side of the compass, which would be 181 to 360 or 000, you would subtract 200 and add 20. Okay, so in this case, this airfield we're landing at, I know the heading is 070, right? So we want to know what the reciprocal course of that is. So we would add 200 to the 070. That would make it 270 minus the 20, so it gives us a course heading to 250. So that's what we want to be flying right now. I'm on the downwind lag just to try and save us some time on the video with this. I didn't feel the need for flying the whole circuit. Alright, so basically you want to be at about 1200 feet when you're on the downwind lag. Okay, I'm at 1400. But you want to be at about 1200 feet on the downwind lag. So here we go. And hopefully I can pull this off for you guys, show you how it works. Okay. Normally we fly at about 350, but I'd say in the downwind lag, because the plane is kind of fast, to do it at about 330 or so. You could do it at 350 if you wanted. Distant wise, you want to be about 1.5 miles, 2 miles from the runway. Basically you want to be able to see that you can see the end of the runway, right? So the closer you are, of course, the kind of the tighter the turn you have to make so quick. So basically what you do, fly the reciprocal course, and so you want it when your tail is 45 degrees off the end of the runway, basically, is when you want to do your turn to the runway. Okay, so that's about there. So we're going to do our turn to the runway, so power back, speed brake out, right? Try not to get below 1200 feet. Okay, and with the jet's so much quicker, it's a little bit trickier with this one, with the jet, but it's not bad. Okay, so gear down, and I'm just going to continue around in this corner, so you'll kind of watch for your lineup for the runway. Flaps down full, and we're going to get a flare up here. Alright, still coming around, and I'm going to give it some up trim, get the velocity vector on our E-bracket there. Alright, we're still coming around. A little more up trim, a little power now because we're sinking pretty good. So we're going to give it some power here. And bring around, and as you can see, we're coming in nicely lined up. Getting nicely lined up, I should say. Alright, and now again, so we want to get that velocity vector right on the end of the runway there, right at the beginning of the runway. It's too far. So now, right around there, our descent rate's 580, so we're a little bit high on the descent rate. Okay, so we're going to back our throttle, let it sink a little bit here. Another shot of up trim, try and get that E bracket a little better. Alright, and now let's try this. Put her at the end of that runway now and see what our descent rate's going to be. There's a little too much throttle. Back her off. Oh, that's pretty close. And we are looking at, well, 500, so we're still a little bit high. But that's not too bad. So we'll sink a little bit more here. And as you can see, this is actually working out pretty nice too. You know, done a couple trials and they weren't going too well, so do the best I can. Okay, so as you can see, so now we're just going to let the plane slowly settle down here. Go a little high in the descent. There we go, 400, 3. Ah, you bastard, going to flare on me. That's what I mean, because I gave a little bit of throttle at the end there because I was sinking too fast. Unfortunately, that happens to us a lot on the carrier, right? You get a little too low and you give that, and then you end up floating. But as you can see, it does work, and it does make it pretty simple to do it. And so what I'm going to do here now is I'm going to hop out of this one and I'm going to hop into the P-51 because I want to show you guys, as I've said before, you can do this with any airplane. Okay, so we're going to hop out, go to the P-51 here. Alright, and now I haven't flown the P-51 for quite some time, so this will be kind of interesting, right? To do. So we'll see how well I can do this with the P-51. So again, you want to fly perpendicular to the runway. Same thing, you want to be about 1,200 feet. I'm about right. And again, you want to have your tail about 45 degrees off the end of the runway before you turn into the runway. Alright? And when you do your turn into the runway with the P-51, because it's slower than the jet, you're going to actually roll about 90 degrees, or so that you're flying perpendicular with the end of the runway, right? That's what you're going to want. Okay, so I'm going to say, yeah, that looks about right. So maybe a little over 45, but that's okay. So we'll go to 45. So we're doing our turn here, and we're going to slow it down. I never did like the compass in this thing, so I just, you know, basically do this visually. And the P-51, if I remember correctly, were 200 for gear. I believe this is the max speed for gear. So as you can see, now we're going to start my turn into the runway. As the runway comes up to the front leading edge of your wing, this is when you want to start your turn. Okay, so gear's going down. I started a tad late. You started a tad earlier, but that's okay. Right. Gear's down. Gonna have to come back and start turning a little too late there, but that's okay. Not possible to correct it, that's for sure. Alright, so we're going to put some flaps down. We'll go half flap at the moment here. And we're getting a little low here. This velocity vector is a little better. Up here. I've never seen an airplane bounce around like a yo-yo. DCS, man, I tell you. I'm barely even moving my stick. Look at the way this thing is bouncing. Alright, so full flaps down now. Damn it, keep your nose up there. A little harder to fly this one because of course you have to do it with the, you gotta use your pitch. So I'm going to cut the throttle because I'm going way too fast here. So now the idea is to hold it over the runway about a foot and then let it stall on so you don't bounce. See, I touched a little too soon, that's why I got the bounce. Okay, now she'll stay this time because I'm under 100. It's simple. So, the 45 degrees off the back tail, I think, is what lines you up for landing these things. And you know, didn't use a velocity vector a whole lot with this one for landing, but it was the way to set it up, and it's that 45 degrees off your tail that gives you the right setting. All right, so and like you say, you can this works for any airplane. Doesn't matter what you're flying. You know, it can be a 747, it could be a Cessna 180, whatever. It'll work. Works for all of them. All right, so you know, practice makes perfect as always. So the more you practice it, of course, the better you'll get at it. And we'll see you guys in the next video. All right, do so.